Release date, Friday the 13th of September, 2024. Ugh. Welcome to another episode of TBD CFB with your hosts. I'm Mason.
And I'm Joey.
Welcome to this episode. This is our Week 3 preview of college football. We're super excited to be with you guys. Normally, Isaac is here, but this week he was feeling a little sick, so unfortunately, he is unavailable for this episode. But we do have his picks. We're going to look at some college football. We are going to pick some of the biggest games of Week 3. And right now, we're going to start a little yap sesh with our hot take question. This week, our hot take question, and like always, if you have your own answer, put it in the freaking comments below. Our hot take question is, what conference has the best officiating crew, and what conference has the worst officiating crew? Joey, what do you think?
So I'm going to go ahead and start out and say the worst officiating crew is going to be the ACC. I think that's hands down. If you have an argument for anywhere else, you're not even close. Okay, maybe the Pac-12 or Pac-2, but ACC is the worst. For best officiating crew, it's really a toss-up, I feel like, between Big Ten and the Big 12. I'd probably give it to the Big Ten. They're a little more consistent. Meanwhile, Big 12, it's either no calls whatsoever or too many freaking calls.
So I am also going to have to go with the ACC officiating crew. I'm not going to put the video in, but I remember a couple years ago when Georgia Tech came to play Georgia. And I know I'm a Georgia fan, but I'm just saying that because I saw this officiating at this game. It's like the biggest thing that ever popped out in my mind. One of our guys goes down the field. They get in a pileup. He jumps on the pile. He gets a personal foul flag, and they, move up 15 yards. And then literally not even 2 minutes later, as we're driving down the field, a Georgia Tech player comes down and jumps on top of the pile like 2 seconds after the play is blown dead, and they don't get flagged. And I was just like, are you freaking kidding me? So obviously, I think they have a little bias, but sometimes they also have a little bias towards their own teams, and they don't, they're just not that great of an officiating crew. And I hear a lot of people knocking them a lot. The best officiating crew, I actually think that the Big Ten has the best officiating crew. You don't actually hear, now you might hear, some Michigan and Ohio State fans. I think that's just such a big rivalry that when they lose, they don't have anybody to blame it on but the refs. But I think the Big Ten actually makes some pretty good calls, and I think that they have the best officiating crew. I want to say the SEC has the second best, but I don't think so. I think if I had to rank it, it'd probably be Big Ten, Big 12, SEC, and then ACC, and then I'm not even going to mention the Pac-12 because they're like gone. So, but to me, yeah, that's who I have as the best and the worst officiating crew in college football. Next up, we're going to start our Week 2 review, starting out with our pick records. Our records are looking pretty good. In third place, we have Joey, who went 4-1 last week. Had a way better week than he has had this season. His overall is now 9-6. In second place, we have Isaac, who went 3-2 last week. He's now 10-5. And then in first place, we have myself. I went 4-1 last week. And I'm not even going to lie to you guys. I definitely got so lucky on the Iowa State pick. Because if I would have picked if I would have picked Iowa, I would have went 3-2.
I would have been 5-0.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely got lucky on that one. But my overall is 12-3. So Isaac, he's 2 games back, but Joey, he's 3 games back, and that is going to get us into picking some of the biggest freaking games of this week, Week 3. We're going to start out with our game of the week. Joey, why don't you tell the folks what our game of the week is?
Our game of the week is number 20 Arizona at number 14 Kansas State on Friday at 8 p.m.
Yes, we get some Friday night collegiate lights in a big-time ranked matchup. It's a Big 12 matchup between the Wildcats and the Wildcats. Well, I can tell you right now, the Wildcats are definitely going to win this thing. Both teams are coming off tightrope wins against unranked opponents. Kansas State coming off a really close one with Tulane. And Arizona only winning by 12 against the FCS school Northern Arizona. So offensively, it looks like Arizona has the upper hand, though. With a little quarterback comparison, we have Noah Fafita, the quarterback of Arizona. He threw, so far, over 2 weeks, he's thrown 595 yards for 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Avery Johnson at Kansas State has gone 334 yards for 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. Now, Arizona hasn't really played anyone, but Noah Fafita, he's got McMillan. And McMillan has already gotten 12 receptions for 315 yards and 4 touchdowns through 2 games. When it comes to defense, it seems both teams are on the struggle bus, as Arizona has given up almost 700 yards of offense this season, and K-State has given up almost 600 yards, giving up 491 yards to Tulane just last week. And usually when you give up that many yards, you lose, because Kansas State only had about 390 yards. So they gave up 100 yards more and still was able to win. So obviously, they're kind of neck and neck on who's going to be better, because they both have not great defenses, but pretty good offenses. So I think this is going to be a closer matchup than a lot of people are anticipating. The ESPN FPI, they have K-State at 73%. The TBD model has K-State by 10, and the spread officially is K-State by 7. Joe, you're picking first. Who do you have?
See, this is a tough one. I mean, both defenses aren't fantastic whatsoever, but both offenses are. I'm a big fan of Noah Fafita, but honestly, K-State's offense has been doing a lot more than what they were supposed to do. Granted, a lot of that is on the ground, less so in the air. There's one key difference that I noticed from last week, and that's Kansas State didn't get a single sack and barely had any tackles for losses in the game against Tulane. Meanwhile, Arizona, they at least had that, right? And they only gave up 2 sacks against Northern Arizona. Now, another issue, though, is Arizona gave up a bunch of running yards against Northern Arizona, and not that many passing yards. So it works out perfectly for Kansas State in a sense. But when it comes to Arizona, I'm just too much of a fan right now. I have to pick Arizona Wildcats for this game. It's really tough for me. I really want to pick Kansas State, but I got to pick Arizona.
So like you, I'm also a really big Noah Fafita fan. I think they are really good. You mentioned, K-State not giving up any sacks, or not getting any sacks, right? Is that what you said? Yeah, K-State not getting any sacks through that offensive line, but Arizona giving up 2. That's something that I noticed when watching the film, is that their offensive line definitely has some struggles. And why I really, really like Arizona, I am gonna have to go with K-State. I don't even feel like I'm playing it safe. This is a really hard one to pick, because both of these offenses are really good. Because Arizona may well come out and freaking, throw all over them. I don't think they're going to run the ball, but I think they're going to be able to throw it, just because that's actually what Tulane was able to do really well against K-State, was throw the ball. But if I had to pick one, I got to go with K-State, just because I think the offensive line is going to be able to protect Avery Johnson better than Arizona's line is going to be able to protect and help run the ball. So I do have K-State in this one. Isaac is also picking K-State, so he will pick K-State this week.
Next up on Saturday, we have number 16 LSU at South Carolina at 12 p.m. It is a noon.
Isaac really wanted to pick this one. It's okay.
Yeah, it is a noon game, though. After week 1, this matchup is honestly a lot better than what we expected it to be. We really thought, after that Old Dominion game for South Carolina, it wasn't going to be a close call, but, LSU decided to play Nichols. And, man, was that a close game. Great win, guys.
They barely won by a nickel.
Exactly. So South Carolina crushed Kentucky on the road last week, 31-6, giving up 0 touchdowns and picking up 2 interceptions, 1 for a pick 6. South Carolina, Lenore Sellers threw for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. The ESPN FBI has LSU at 51%. The TBD model has LSU at -4 and spread LSU -7. Of course, Isaac's pick is LSU, the fake Tigers. Mason, how about you?
I think this one became a lot tougher after I saw how LSU played against Nicholls State, because obviously I thought they were going to come out in week 1 and get a big win over USC. That didn't happen. And then, of course, I thought they were going to absolutely pile drive Nicholls State into the ground, and that didn't happen. And I thought that South Carolina was going to be Old Dominion by a ton, and that didn't happen. And then really I thought Kentucky, with the Brock Vandegrift transfer from Georgia, was going to absolutely crush crush South Carolina, and that didn't happen. So now I really don't know what to do or how to pick this because LSU does have proven quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, who has a really good long ball. They've still got some dudes in that wide receiver room, but that defense is what scares me. If South Carolina comes into Willie B tomorrow playing exactly like they did on the road, and they do that at home against LSU, who albeit definitely is a tougher opponent than Kentucky, don't get me wrong, but if they come in playing like that tomorrow, then they will 100% win this game. And that's why I'm actually going to go with South Carolina to win this. I've picked South Carolina a lot of times to win these games, and I've never been right. So hopefully the boys in Columbia help me out on this one. But I really think that South Carolina has a really good shot to win this game. And from what I've seen from LSU this season, I just can't pick them right now. I don't trust them. And something that's been on my gut lately is like, if I can't trust you, I'm not going to pick you, which is why I picked Iowa State last week, because I do not trust Cade McNamara, and I ended up being right. So I got to go with my gut on this one. I don't trust, and really I don't even trust that South Carolina that much, but I definitely don't trust Brian Kelly right now, and I do not trust the LSU Tigers. Give me the Cox and Lenora Sellers and Shane Beamer in this one.
This is kind of a tough one because if you really look at it, LSU can, even against Nichols, they could not get the run game really going. But, the passing game was, working out just fine with Nussmeier. I think he had 6 touchdowns against Nichols. Granted, it was still a close game. Meanwhile, South Carolina, look, I'll give you this. Their defense is a lot better. But let's be real. Kentucky sucks at defense because South Carolina's offense is atrocious. I mean, if we really look at it, Sellers cannot throw. He is more comfortable running the ball, and so is their offensive coordinator. They love to run the ball. Here's what sucks for LSU. They can't guard the run. They've given up so many rushing yards. I think it's over 300 total rushing yards now within the past 2 games. That's an issue. But, if you force Sellers to throw it, I think LSU wins this game. So I will have to pick LSU. I kind of like the same stance you're in. If I can't trust you, I'm not going to pick you. South Carolina gives me nothing to trust, nothing to base trust off of. That's not just me being a Clemson fan. That's just solely football. You could be, if you're up, at least LSU's consistently like, what the heck is going on? South Carolina's like, they're really down this week. Oh, they're really up this week. They're probably going to be down this week. So give me LSU.
Don't get me wrong. I am gonna disagree with you right here just for a second. Don't get me wrong. I do think that Kentucky does not have as good of a defense as LSU. But I actually think that if Lenora Sellers is forced to throw it, they're actually going to do better. They broke off some big runs against Kentucky. But in Lenora Sellers, I think he did throw a pick, but he did throw some really good passes. So if the wide receivers can create some separation, he has a good arm and he has good aim. So I think that if they can outrun those LSU DBs, I think they're going to be in business. And let's not forget, Shane Beamer, he's not new to knocking off teams at home. Let's just think 2 years ago we saw this man take down the number 5 team in the country, Tennessee, who had a high-rated, high-powered offense with Hendon Hooker at quarterback. So I'm just saying, I would not be surprised if South Carolina won, and neither should you.
I also want to say, though, like, when it comes to LSU's defense, they've shown they can at least somewhat guard the pass, a lot better than they can guard the run. Their DBs are not as easily beat. Granted, when they're beat, they like to, just tug on you and give up a pass interference call. But I just don't see any wide receivers from South Carolina doing that. I don't see anybody. No, I don't. I don't see anybody.
Nicholas Harbor, Jared Brown. Are you serious, dude?
The amount of times I've heard people say Nicholas Harbor's so good. So why was he so bad against Old Dominion? Why was he so bad against
speed in the game? He's got to be good.
That doesn't mean anything until you're up in the real game, though.
I agree. I'm just messing.
No, I know, but like, you can talk up his name all you want, but until he shows and prove, like, I'm sure he had a great game against Kentucky. I'm sure a lot of people are going to have great games against Kentucky.
Speaking of that, yeah, I would definitely cover. I would pick Georgia to cover 24 points against Kentucky this weekend. Anyway.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I just see LSU's defense miles better than Kentucky.
I got South Carolina. I just got LSU. You got LSU. Let's get into our next game, which is actually a fun one, and it is a top 25 matchup, the only other one this week. It's number 24 Boston College and number 6 Missouri at a weird time of 12:45 p.m. This game is being played on SEC Network. You've got two teams coming in 2-0. You've got Boston College, who just knocked off Florida State last weekend in week 1. They beat an FCS opponent by a lot this past weekend. You've got Missouri, who's coming off big wins against Buffalo and Murray State. They have not given up a single point all year yet. They obviously, I think that they will this week. That's not my pick. I'm just saying I think that they're definitely going to give up some points because this is Boston College, in my opinion, is definitely a better team. Now, Boston College, you could say that win against Florida State was a little sus because DJU obviously is dog water. But there's no way I don't think Florida State was going to win that game, even at home. Missouri looking really good, got Brady Cook back at quarterback. And I think this is actually probably going to be, I think it's going to be a pretty good matchup. This is the EFPN FPI. We have Missouri 77% to win this game. Our model, the TBD model, has Mizzou to win this game by 6. And the spread is Missouri by 16.5. I'm picking first on this one. I don't think the spread should be that high. If I'm wrong, I'll own it next week, but personally, I do not think the spread should be that high. I am going to pick Missouri to win this game because it's in Como. I think that they have a high-powered offense. They've scored a ton of points. Their defense is looking good. I know they've only played Buffalo and Murray State, but not giving up a point at all, that basically means you didn't even allow a team to get into field goal range, which is pretty good. But I think Boston College is better than 2 touchdowns and a field goal. So I will pick Missouri to win, but I will pick Boston College to cover.
You probably caught my reaction on camera when I actually realized what the official spread was. It was shock. 16.5 seems like a lot. I don't know if it's going to be that much. I can see it being that much. I definitely think, Florida State's not as great as a team as everybody made them out to be. That doesn't. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Boston College is a lot better of a team than everybody expected, right? 1 win, they're ranked now, they win again, so on and so forth. This game, it's just hard to pick against Missouri. Their offense is really electric, and I haven't seen any hiccups in their defense yet. Granted, when it comes down to it, they haven't really played very competitive teams yet, so when they come up against offense that is a little more competitive, then boom, we might see more points put on the board against them. Boston College, though, it still seems like a one-dimensional kind of offense. Yes, they have the pass, but they really love the run, and they're starting to opt into more of the triple option and read option plays, so they're going to be dynamic, but I definitely have Missouri winning this game.
Yeah, there's definitely not much to say about that one, so we will go ahead and move on into our next one, which is, this one is a fun one, and this one's going to be hard to pick, and this one's interesting. This one's got a lot to it this week. This is number 9 Oregon at Oregon State at 3:30 p.m. This game obviously being played in Corvallis. It is obviously another super early rivalry matchup in week 3. This game is not even usually played until week 13 during rivalry week. So this might be the earliest this game has been played, with these two teams not being in the same conference anymore. I think that probably has something to do with it. But this is a really early matchup. Obviously, Oregon not looking great, barely got the win over Idaho 2 weeks ago, and barely got the win over Boise State last week. So the hype, I think they were definitely overhyped, definitely overrated. So I think this one is going to be definitely interesting, to say the least. The ESPN FPI, Oregon at 69%. The TBD model has Oregon by 30, and the spread is Oregon by 16.5. Let's not forget that just 2 years ago, we saw Oregon State win this game and actually knock Oregon out of playoff contention in Bo Nix's first year there, Dan Lanning's first year there. So will that happen again? Joey, what do you think?
I don't think it's going to happen again. I mean, Boise State had a good game against Oregon. Let's not kid ourselves. Boise State is a really good football team. I definitely think that going into the season, they were favorites to clinch the Group of 5 spot in the playoffs, and I still think they're my favorite to get that Group of 5 spot. So the close game there didn't shock me. The issue is Boise State relies heavily on the run. Guess who also relies heavily on the run? Oregon State. But they also don't have a defense. You know what's crazy? Pac-2 and Mountain West, no defense still. I still am going to have to pick Oregon here. Their offense, eventually it's got to click. Their offense somewhat clicked last game, but and luckily it did, or else they would have lost that game. Now they just need their defense to step up. It's either one or the other. They need both to click at the same time. But I don't see Oregon State winning this. You can only do so much. They didn't even get 150 yards passing last game. So yeah, Oregon.
So you just mentioned something really important, and that's that Oregon's defense has been extremely lackluster. And for such a hype around, the quarterback transfer, Dylan Gabriel, they really haven't done, and he hasn't really done that much. Barely winning against Boise State at home, barely winning against freaking Idaho at home. And then you have a team who played San Diego State last week, won by 21, and didn't get up a single point, which again means they probably did not allow that team into field goal range, or if they did, then San Diego missed a field goal. So I think that something that Oregon State actually has over Oregon right now is their defense, which is actually really surprising because Dan Lanning was the defensive coordinator before at Georgia, before he was at Oregon. So this is really confusing on that. I think that Oregon State actually has a really good chance in this game. You have Giovanni McCoy, who's a junior at quarterback this year, who's been playing really well. I'm still waiting to see something from Dylan Gabriel and the Oregon Ducks. It's in Corvallis, man. I got to go Oregon State, bro. I know that's so scary, and I'm probably going to be pulling for that. And I don't really want to be because I really want Oregon to beat Ohio State later this year. But I think if those two teams were to play right now, that would be a dangerous game for Oregon because I don't think they would be able to guard Keenshawn Judkins at all. So I think that Oregon State probably they'll put something together, and I think they might catch Oregon off guard, which is why I'm going to have to go with Oregon State in this game.
And for our last game, we got Tulane at number 15, Oklahoma at 3:30 p.m. Now, Tulane coming off a tough loss against Kansas State. Meanwhile, Oklahoma coming out of a nail-biter against Houston. Whose defense is going to step up? Whose offense is going to step up? Or are they both going to crumble? ESPN FPI has Oklahoma at 79%. TBD model has Tulane at -2, and the official spread has Oklahoma at -14. Isaac's pick is Oklahoma here. Mason, what do you think?
I think after Oklahoma's performance against Houston at home last week offensively, which was, I think Timothy Bailey would probably say horrid. He's a big Oklahoma fan, used to be a writer over at Mike Farrell Sports. I think that he would definitely say that last week's performance was piss poor. He did say that he was going to take the spread, which is 14 right now. I don't know if I would take that because I think that Tulane is going to play extremely well. If they come in and do what they did to Kansas State, I think that they definitely could win this one. Now, I will say, granted, that Oklahoma's defense is way better than Kansas State's defense, and they are going into a much tougher place. But honestly, I think the way that they look right now, I think they're a better team than Houston. So who's to say that Tulane won't come into Gaylord Memorial Stadium and win that freaking game, which is why I'm going to go with Tulane to beat the Sooners on the road this week. I don't know, man. Oklahoma and Jackson Arnold, I don't know why you would look that way against Houston. Is Brent Venables the answer? I don't know, but man, yeah, give me freaking Tulane, dude.
I honestly don't think this has anything to do with Brent Venables, or at least the Houston game. I think a lot of it has to do with just how the players played and the lack of talent as of right now. I mean, that's really all I can really chalk it up to right now. I mean, last year their offense was really pretty good, honestly, but their defense kind of took a step back. Now their defense is a step forward again, and their offense stepped right back. Look, that Houston game was really concerning. It told a lot about the discipline of the Oklahoma players. They were trying to get in fights where they just had no business getting in fights. It's like, dude, Houston should not be hanging in this game. And you know what? Kansas State might be a good football team, right? So having a loss against Kansas State may not hurt. This game is always a good game. It's always a good game between Oklahoma and Tulane. This time I have to pick Tulane to win this game. I think the Green Wave definitely has this game. Last week just showed too many flaws in which I think Tulane's offense can take advantage of. And honestly, defensively, I think they can take advantage of it as well.
Because they really didn't play that poorly on defense, and Kansas State's offense looks really good. I mean, yeah, so that means Tulane's offense gave up about 390 yards. But I mean, they were able to stay in it. So that's my point. So if they are able to stay in this game, go into Oklahoma Stadium and freaking play the same game they played last week against Kansas State, and if their defense shows up next week and actually does not allow Oklahoma to stay in the game, we could definitely see an upset of Tulane beating freaking Oklahoma. So that's just one man's opinion, but it may happen, it may not happen. Like we said, Isaac is picking Oklahoma, and I think this week we've definitely picked different on a lot of games, so the pick records definitely will look a little interesting after next week. But yeah, we're really excited for a great week of college football. That is our last game, so that means this is coming to the end of our show. But yeah, check us out on social media at TBD CFB. We're definitely on TikTok. We're definitely on Instagram. Go check us out if you love college football content. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, if you would go ahead and like this video and subscribe, that would be awesome. We post a ton of college football content that we know you'll love. So yeah, just check it out, and thanks for listening.
And always remember,
no matter who you pull for, if you're on God's side, you're always on the winning team. Just know that there is a Father in heaven who loves you. The Bible tells us that for God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son to die for us, that whoever believes in him shall never perish but have everlasting life. And this is what we believe. This is the foundational truth of TBD CFB, that we are sinners who needed saving. We couldn't save ourselves. God, in his love and mercy, sent Jesus to die for us, to stand in our place, to take his wrath, and to die and raise from the grave, and he is still alive, and we believe that 100%, and he is moving. And if you ever need anything, if you ever need prayer for anything, we pray for our listeners. If you want to talk about that right there, just the gospel in general, we just ask that you reach out, send us a comment, or put a comment on this YouTube video, send us a DM on Instagram or TikTok, and yeah, we'd love to talk to you and pray for you, and we are praying for you. So next week, we will see y'all. We're going to talk about some games. We're going to review these, and we will see you next week.
bye-bye.
Later.